Let's just wait a second for people to log in. Okay. Okay. Hello, everyone. The webinar will start shortly. We're waiting for people to log in. So please sit tight. And maybe if you feel like, you can write in the chat where you are joining us from and why are you so interested in quality metrics? Or if you have any questions about quality metrics, you can start by putting them in the chat, and then maybe during the Q&A, Gabor can reply. Okay. I see people still logging in. Okay, let's get started slowly. So, hello everyone, and welcome to today's GALA webinar. My name is Isabella Massardo. I'm content strategist here at GALA. The topic of today's presentation is an evergreen topic, translation quality metrics, but still very important in the age of AI, large language models, neural machine translation, and so forth. The presenter today is Gabor Bechenier. He's a long-time GALA member and founding managing partner and CEO of Morphologic Localization, a language service provider and language technology company located in Budapest. You know more or less how it works, so please feel free to use the QA box to submit your questions, or the chat if you prefer. We will have a Q&A at the end of the presentation. And the webinar will be recorded. I will send a follow-up email with the link to the recording as soon as it becomes available. So, Gabor, I'm going to leave the floor to you.
Well, thank you very much, Isabella, for the introduction. And yeah, first of all, welcome everybody. I'm happy to be here and discuss or present the topic about translation quality metrics to you. Before I start, please allow me a quick introduction of myself. As Isabella already introduced me, I'm Gabor Bechenier. I have my background is basically in software localization and machine translation. And yeah, over the years, from both of my hats, so both from as a translator and also as a technology company, as a language technology developer, I identified that this topic, the translation quality topic, is something which is, first of all, is very getting, I believe it's getting hot. And what I also recognize is that there are still many misunderstandings or misconceptions around the topic. And in this presentation, what I try to is, first of all, to give you a rough overview about the metrics, the different options, what they are covering, the weaknesses and the advantages. But even more important, I think, is to highlight to clarify the details behind these misconceptions. And at the end, I try to give you a kind of vision of mine, how I would imagine what would be the ideal scenario for the future, how we can combine human work and machine work together to have a brighter future in the industry. So let's start with the demands. What are the drivers for automated metrics? So basically, we have two main drivers for that nowadays. One is machine translation. You know that machine translation is basically getting over, or it is already has reached the point where so it's representing a much bigger portion in the language industry than human translation. And of course, technology is evolving continuously, and in order to able to decide if a new technology is better than another, or if you want to combine or to compare two engines, to different providers. If you want to select what machine translation, so if you would like to do automated post editing or select good quality translation and not provided to post editors, etc. So plenty of scenarios where you want to evaluate machine translation output. So this is one of the main drivers for automated metrics. And the other is I think at least as important, it's not that much in focus, but it's also very interesting, is the evaluation or filtering of large training data sets. Because large training data sets are the fundamentals for the machine learning, and if they are typically somehow noisy, and you have to do automated evaluations on them because it's basically impossible to do it on human basis because it's simply not efficient. There's no time, simply not enough resources and time, and of course budget for that. So these are the two main drivers, and we have basically two main methods behind the how you can measure quality. One is what I would call quality evaluation, or I think I can say that's a kind of a standard naming for that. Quality evaluation is a method where you are measuring, where you are using existing references. You have one or more reference translation which you can use to compare with the machine translation output. This is what is called quality evaluation. And then we have quality estimation, which is even a bigger challenge because in that scenario, you don't even have a reference. So you try to judge the quality simply based on the source segment and of course of the machine translation output. In this webinar, during this session, I would like to focus on this quality evaluation. The reason is, first of all, because both topics are big enough to spend time on only one of them. The other is that I think by showing to you what challenges we have still in the quality evaluation scenario, so in a scenario where you have already some references, by showing you all these challenges, this will give you an idea what are the real challenges with the quality estimations where you don't even have any reference. So my opinion is that I would be happy if we could find a good solution for quality evaluation, and then we can jump to quality estimation. So so this is why I try to focus on that first point. Okay, so let's start. I mentioned that during the years, with the discussions of different colleagues and customers and partners about translation quality, one of what we recognized was that most of the people, they are not aware of the fact that there is not only one or two metrics. So we have not only a few, we have a bunch of metrics. So most of the people, they don't know blue score. I think it's the one of the well-known scoring. I think this is the common sense metric, so everybody knows blue score. Some probably know CHRF score, and then we have a bunch of others, and this list is far from complete. So this is just a selection, just to highlight to you that we are speaking here about dozens of even I would say hundreds. If we look at all the different variants of the same metric, then we have even hundreds of different metrics on the table, and they are different they are slightly different, but to give you an idea, so there are two main differences between these the automated metrics. One of the metrics are what I can call traditional metrics, like blue or CIHRF. Those metrics, let's say call them traditional metrics, they are basically try to measure the distance or the similarity between two strings. So this is basically the very historical grown metric type. And then we have the new type of metrics, which are based on neural language models, which are the new ones. Best known of them are Comet and BAD score. And I will give you some insight, or try to give you some insight about the problems with those metrics, especially with the traditional ones. But I hope I can highlight also, or point also on the fact that even the newest or the latest metrics, which are based on a new technology, based on a neural language models, they also far from perfect. So that was the first conception that there are only few metrics. No, we have tons of them. And within those metrics, another misconception is that those metrics are standardized. So at least the idea is if I hear here, okay, I have a blue score of 80. Fine, that's fine. But what is this blue score? So blue score is not, again, not something which is, you cannot say there is the blue score, because in real life, in the research and academic world as well, and also in the industrial usage, blue is used in many different ways. You can see here, this is, I know Wikipedia is not necessarily the best source, but I think that's still reliable enough to have a citation from Wikipedia. You can see there's no single definition, and there are only typical choices, but not standardized choices for these settings. Because the fact is that the blue as a method or as a metric is of course standardized, but there are many parameters which can be changed, and those parameters are not necessarily standardized. In the academic world, there is Sacra Bleu, which is typically used if someone wants to have standardized measurements or for comparing different. So if you are using Bleu, then that would be the golden standard. But even in the research and academic field, at least this is what I see, is that there's no clear definition if Sacra Bleu was really used, and it's not always clear and always transparent what parameters were used within Bleu, because there are tons of you can see here. So I highlighted here some of the parameters you can change, and by changing those, you will of course get different numbers. So two Bleu scores are not necessarily covering this same results, or vice versa. And what is the impact on the industry on that's let's say lack of standards? This example I will show to you is it's not coming from the machine translation world. It's more coming from the CAT tools, so the translation tools, the word of the translation tool. But the symptom or the impacts are basically very similar, and I think it's a very good demonstration. Because let's take this example. So here we have two sentences. One sentence is in 3 years I want to be a doctor. The other sentence is in 3 years I want to be a translator. And basically what is happening if you are using one of those traditional metrics like Bleu or CHRF or any of them, they try to measure the difference on the technical base on character or n-grams or different levels. So this is, of course, every metric has a different view on that. What is a word? What is a character, etc. So this is why we have so many. So basically what's happening here, they want to measure the distance or the difference, the technical difference, and provide one figure about the difference. And the very same happens when you are running a fuzzy match analysis in the CAT tools, because what is happening, you have a source sentence. Let's assume this is your source sentence, and then you have another which is already in the translation memory. Here is the translation of it, and then you have another sentence, and then you will get a fuzzy match score for that, for the similarity between this sentence and this sentence. So basically what those metrics are doing, they try to give you a figure. And what's happening if, and this CAT tools, this is not necessarily that well known. They are basically using those metrics. It's not transparent which metric they are using, but they are using some of those metrics to provide this, what is called fuzzy match. And what's the problem with that? The problem is that we have many different results. Sorry, I was a little bit too quick. So one CAT tool is showing to you, saying, okay, this two sentences, this is the similarity of 93%. If you look at another tool, and if you are analyzing this very same content, then it will give you 84%, and the third tool will give you 75%. And I guess so. It's not a comprehensive. I mean, there are many other tools. I just picked up 3 of the most known tools. And you can see the difference. And the problem I see here is that we are using figures, metrics, numbers, which should tell about quality, which should tell about translation efforts, and we are lacking of standards. So you can see the same thing. We have huge differences here in the figures, and I see, and as these are the fundamentals for payments, for example, and also for effort measurement of measuring of the efforts, translation efforts. I see a big problem here. And of course, the same goes for if we speak about machine translation, because if we compare two machine translated outputs, one score will give you 93, the other will give you 84, and it's not transparent, necessarily transparent what was exactly behind that score. Okay, so then we have the third one. I think this is the most interesting one. So I think most of the people think that okay, automated metrics, blue score, meteor, they are telling something about the quality, translation quality. But fact is that it's basically not really about the quality. Of course, in some extent, you can look at it as like a quality score, but in reality, it's really just a technical difference or distance between two strings. So it's not telling you can see in my previous slide you could see that there's a match of 93 score, blue scores or whatever score. That should be a good quality translation, I would say, or at least would be the expectation. But if you look at the translation level, you could see that the translation so that two segments of the translation, they were not really matching each other. So I have here some real life example to highlight to that problem. So I'm just putting only this a little bit beside. So this is one of a real life example. So here we have a source segment, source sentence. In the event of such termination, seller will immediately stop all work. And then we have a reference translation. It's a German example. Sorry for that German. This is what I can understand more easily. But I will try to explain to those who don't speak German the difference. So this is the human reference. And now I have two machine translation outputs here. One is from engine one or provider one, or the other is from engine two and provider two. And you can see, though, these figures are now based on CHRF scores, and one is showing to you 84, 85%, the other is 75. And if you are looking at the numbers, then you would say, okay, clearly this is the better translation. So this should be the better translation, and this one should be the lower quality translation. But if you look at the content, if you look at the translation, what you will see is basically that there's no real difference. So from linguistic point of view, there is no difference between those translations. The only difference is the word order and nothing else. So that's one of the problems nowadays, that with those metrics, that machine translation quality has reached a level where those let's say technical metrics cannot really tell about the quality. In the good old statistical machine translation world, those automated metrics were somehow reliable and telling something about the quality, simply because machine translation output was very basic at that times. But nowadays, in the neural machine translation world, especially in the world of the large language models, any difference, technical difference in two sentences is not necessarily telling you that one or the other is good or bad. So this is one of the problems, issues we have here with this metric. What I'd like to show, what I wanted to show to you. But on top we have another one. Namely, it's not even that those two translations are basically equally good, or I would say probably the second one is slightly even better than the first one here. We have another problem, namely that's the reference. I would say so. If I would be a post editor now, and I wouldn't know that this is the human reference, I would score this one as the highest. So that would be my 100% translation or match or score. Then that would be the second one, and that would be the last one. And why is this? Because here there's a important difference. So seller will immediately stop, and here the German reference is saying, okay, the seller must or has to stop the work immediately. And this is I mean, this is not necessarily a big issue, but it's still a difference, and this is reflected. So, from translation point of view, the machine translation is slightly even better than the human reference. And I'm of course not telling that this is always the case, but what is important here that it's the, let's say, the number of such cases is increasing, and especially this case that you have two equally good machine translations. Only that's one is a little bit slightly different, and the difference in the score is just based on the fact that the one is a little bit more different compared to the reference. But from linguistic point of view, this is occurring more and more frequently. So this is a real challenge. And this is why basically that was one of the findings, or one of the interesting what I learned now at the MP Summit a few weeks ago is basically was this study, which is already from last year. So it's stating basically, what you can see here is the basically the scoring of the different metrics. You can see here another bunch of metrics listed, and what you can see here is that this table is showing the let's say the how good the metric is performing compared to human judgment. And so the first one is the best, and the last one is the worst. And you can see that blue score is performing really badly. CHRF as well, but even the neural metrics, so the language model based neural metrics like word score or some of the comets, they are not necessarily performing that well. So you can see here we have a problem, and one of the main messages I would say is, and I completely agree, this was the title of this paper. I completely agree. So we should basically, the industry should stop using blue, because blue is nowadays not telling anything about the quality. It's a good question if neural metrics are the solution, and which of the neural metrics, because they have also the disadvantages. The biggest problem with the neural metrics are that they are very, let's say, it's not, they are in real life using them, it's not necessarily easy. So it's time consuming. You need more resources to use them. And the other is that even the neural metrics are not necessarily reflecting the quality. They are much better than let's say, the traditional metrics. But for example, Comet, the problem with Comet is one of the main problems with Comet is, in my opinion, is that it's at least the standard, the basic Comet is trained on Euronews, which is a kind of domain for itself. That means that it's very much focusing on that kind of content. But if you have a different industry specific for example, railway specific brake technology content, then it will probably fail. So that's the criticism against the neural metrics. But definitely blue and all the traditional metrics there are nowadays, I would say we can think about forgetting them. But still, what is interesting to me, that still the academic world and the industry is still basically using blue, and so we are. And it's very interesting to see that scientists and all the researchers, they are somehow sticking on it, even if they know that's not it's far from perfect. Okay, then the misconception number 4, that is that we can rely on human references. And always when I hear human translations are high quality and consistent, so if I see here that, then this is my face, because I'm in the translation industry since decades, and I have seen enough not necessarily perfect human translation. So this is one side of the coin, and the other is that training data, translation memories, even terminology lists are not because of the humans, but simply because due to real life situations, they are not always clean. They are typically not clean. You have issues with that, and my problem is that and this is also a reflection to this previous slide, where you could see that the human reference is not necessarily the best one. So I have the feeling that nowadays we are not focusing enough on the human reference. We try to tweak our engines to something which we don't even know if it's really the best one. So their human reference is as important as anything else. I would say even more important than anything else. And here are some real life examples from our because from some of our users. So this is an example that we made an analysis on a training data set, which with about it was about approximately 200,000 segment pairs translation units in a TMX format. And then we took the terminology of the customer, of the user, and we performed an analysis based on so it's an analysis of terminology accuracy. And what we found was that almost or even more than 10% of the human reference of the TMX database contains incorrect terminology on the source side and also on the target side. Or there's of course the overlap where both can be wrong. So these are the proportions you have in a real life, and this is the real life scenario. And even if these metrics, I mean, measuring terminology accuracy is also a challenge by itself. So it's not so we have for sure some false positives here and that's here, and maybe some unidentified here. So even if we can deduct the number a little bit, the proportions are typically similar to that what you can see here. So it's, I would say, perfect TMX, perfect terminology is only in the books, but not in real life. So you cannot find them in real life. And then this is the results. Or the other interesting finding. So that was that machine translation and of course you can forget here globally. It can be basically any trained engine which is trained on a specific domain. We are now in a situation that a well-trained engine can, at least from terminology accuracy point of view, can provide better results than humans. So, and this is again the same user, the results on a sample size. So we had a higher level of accuracy in terminology from the machine than from in the human reference. And I'm asking, if we have this content in the human reference, why is our intention to bring our engine closer to the human reference? We should, in some cases, even bring it further back from the reference. And so this is one of the important topics. I think it's not really we are not the whole language industry is not really focusing on is the source, the reference part. So it's not always perfect. And then the number 5 misconception, number 5, that quality is something absolute. I think this is one of the very typical issues we have that, there is nothing like the best translation in the world. One example for that, you might have many different proper translations for the same stores. There was a very, very interesting statement, I don't know, from Dr. Andrei Bojar from Charleston University at the anti-summit in Macau. He presented in a similar topic, and he had a very, very interesting example in a source sentence of about 20 words. We had to guess how many different translations are possible. So a sentence in an average size, average length. And my assumption was, okay, maybe 10 or 20. But what he told, and that was really bluffing, that it was 75,000, if I remember correctly. Maybe it was not that high, but the proportion, 70,000 different translations. Just you can imagine. So let's assume you have 3 words which might have 4 different synonyms, which are equally good. Then you have already then a high number of different variations, and then you can combine it with different word orders, etc., etc. So this is something which is very frequently not taken into account. That there is not only one good translation in the world. So that's something which is not. This is not that. And there are some metrics like Bleu. In Bleu, you could use alternative translations, but the typical everyday usage of Bleu, even of Bleu, is that you are using only one reference and comparing everything to that one reference. Then the other is what is frequently not taken into account. That's sometimes, yeah, it's you have this fit for purpose approach, and you have many scenarios where you don't need high quality human translation necessarily. And in that case, a lower linguistically lower quality is still fine. So you don't have to you don't have to take care about that. So there's not one quality scenario in the world. There are many different quality scenarios which can be used, and each of them for the what is important that the quality should fit should fit for purpose. Terminology accuracy, I mentioned it before. There are many scenarios where, for example, in technical documentation or user interface translation or user manuals, terminology accuracy is much more important than fluency and other. Tag placements. I have not seen many metrics. I'm not sure. Maybe we can discuss it after my presentation, but as far as I know, and in real life, of course, you have tags in the documents, in technical documents at least, but typically even in normal documents because there is formatting in it. So, and in many scenarios, especially in the technical documentation translation scenario, the proper placement of the text is way more important than the fluency of the translation. But no metric is, I would say there is, at least in my knowledge, there's no metric which is really combining this and the importance of the text placement when providing the figure. And then fluency, again, we have scenarios where fluency is very important, and the other scenarios where fluency is not important, and many. So what my main message is with that, this will hopefully also reflected on the following slides, is that you might have very different scenarios, and the actual quality model you should use is you cannot, or in other words, you cannot use one quality model for covering everything, and you cannot use one metric for covering to cover everything. It's always depending on the scenario you are applying this metric. So what to do? We have a situation where we see that we have imperfect metrics, we have imperfect human translation, references. We have it's a bigger challenge to provide to measure the quality than to provide good quality machine translation. Of course, this is kind of provoking statement, but we are really close to that scenario. What can we do? So I would say there's still hope. One hope is, and this is one of my, let's say, messages to the peers at GALA, so the colleagues at GALA, both from the academic and also from the industrial scenario, that we should work on standardization of the different metrics and different options. And one of the very best options I think we have is MQM. And I have the feeling, I'm very interested in your opinion, but I have the feeling that MQM is way much underestimated and it's not used frequently enough. And just to give you, so you can, I'm encouraging you to learn a bit more about MQM, to look at the references. But basically, what is important here, by using MQM, you can use different dimensions, standardized dimensions or metrics. Let's call it that way, like terminology, accuracy, etc., style, and any custom. For example, you could here apply the tag accuracy as a dimension. Because if you have a scenario where this is important, then why not? Why not adding it to your metric? So that is one of my let's say call outs. That's we should use MQM or we should use MQM as a basis and then define different standardized metrics for different scenarios. I would love to see that and meet such scenarios more in later on in real life. And the other is it's a metric, a human evaluation methodology or metric, which is based on MQM and which is called HOPE or Logipan. And I heard it's so I from it was at least I know it from Serge Gladgrove. You can look at the references. I think it's interesting to read the details. I have no time to go into the details, but just to give you an overview, what is the main idea behind LogicPen? So the first is that it's based on the MQM translation quality evaluation system, what I showed before to you. What is important that it is using a dramatically reduced number of categories or dimensions. You can see here these are the dimensions or categories which are used by Logipem. I think these are the most important ones, but I can imagine that in some other scenarios you can even reduce further or extend it. So that can be changed. So I'm not saying that this is the only and very good, but this is a very good baseline to be used. Um, and the other, so this is one of the differences compared to or one of the main methods what is implemented here in Logipem, that the number of dimensions is reduced to a lower number. And the other is that the penalty points, as you can hear here, the penalty points are not growing linearly, but they are exponentially growing. And the result is that the scores are that way much closer to the human judgment than in the traditional linear penalty point system. And last but not least, this is again, I think, a good recommendation for the industry to use human evaluation on a smaller batch size or sample lot, like 100. This is the standard implemented by Logipem. I agree that this is a very good number because this is something that can be handled efficiently, but is still big enough to have to provide you some insight. And of course, I'm not saying, because I know that we cannot forget the automated metrics. So we still have to use automated metrics in the future. Of course, we should try to improve them, and we should be aware of the weakness of all those metrics. But my opinion is that we should use more human evaluations. So we should combine the automated metrics and perform at least a sample lot metric measurement by humans when we try to evaluate the output. And here's a real life example that we did in our measurements. What you can see here is we try to compare two engines just to see, okay, was it an improvement or not? And when we saw those figures from CIHRS scores, we were a little bit shocked. Okay, so we did something very wrong because the score went down from 92 to 85. But then we said, okay, let's take a deeper dive into the results. We used the Logipem methodology. We made a sample size of 100 segments, and what turned out is that basically the second engine performed slightly better than the first one. So you can see that this is the Logipem score you can see here, and here you can see the proportions of the post editing. So slightly higher number of segments didn't need any post editing, and a lower number, only minor change. Of course, so this I'm not saying this is always the case, but this is also something which is more and more frequently happening. That you got two blur scores, and in the past, if you had such results, you would have thrown away everything and say, okay, that's we are going into the wrong direction. Nowadays, you cannot say that easily. So I would say that in most of the cases, you simply need to perform some human evaluations on the contents. Okay, so basically this is already my end of the presentation. This is my last slide. So I try to wrap it up. What I try to show to you is that the language technology industry is now in a status that we have to define and define new metrics, and those metrics should be standardized. Or if we cannot agree on any standards, then we should at least agree on some transparency. We should know what is behind a specific metric. So if I'm saying, okay, I have now 80 score of that and that metric, then I should know how was this calculated, what was exactly behind that, both in the industry and in the academic world. The other important thing is that we have to put way more effort into the quality assurance of references. Because this is, this is the endless game. We are using machines to evaluate, or we are using humans to evaluate machines, and we are using machines to evaluate humans. And this is an endless loop. And basically, that loop should be that's fine. I mean, this is the way how we can do that. But the proportions nowadays, I think we are using way more automated evaluations for instead of the human evaluation part is somehow is not used frequently enough. And the other problem is I see here that without knowing the reference, the quality of the reference, you might, even if you have the best score, the best metric, it will not help you in improving the quality. So we need to increase the involvement of the human translators in the QA process, and I think this is again something which is the hope for the humans in the industry, for the professional translators, because focus will shift. At least this is my hope. Focus will shift from the translation itself, because translation can be performed by the machines. I would say crowdsourcing translation is not necessarily much better than a well-performing machine translation engine on an average content. This is my personal opinion. On the other hand, humans are still needed and urgently and highly needed in the QA process. And I mean here really not only just the simple post editing, but really qualified terminology work, qualified linguistic work, qualified research, linguistic research, etc. So it's not simply by doing some post editing and some corrections, but also doing qualified measurements with the right metrics, with the right dimensions, using standards, etc. So this is what we need way more in the industry. And if we have that, then I think we have a win-win situation, because humans will still will have work, and they will have even more interesting work than in the past or in the present. And the automated, so all the machines, all the automated processes will get better. And yeah, that's basically what I wanted to say during this presentation. We have some time for questions. And yeah, if you would like to contact me, here's my email. I am happy to continue the discussions either now or in later on in offline or during the conferences, probably at GALA next year.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for this overview and for kind of pinpointing this problem that we have of lack of standardized metrics. But let's see whether there are some questions from the audience. You can either write your questions in the chat and we'll just reply them, or you can raise your hand if you prefer, and we can open your microphone and you can talk directly to Gabor. I see Friedrich has a question. What do you think of the Taos DQF MQM typology being adopted by Phrase for its embedded LQA functionality?
Basically, I would say so the direction is the right one. So this is somehow the future, but I would still take the results always with a grain of salt. So it's much better than these traditional metrics but what is important that you always have to take care that language is still so complex that even with a well-performing language model, it's not necessary. It's not necessarily telling you the truth about quality. So this is what I mentioned with this endless loop, because you try to create models which are based on human translations. You try to create an adapted model which is then focusing on that domain or that specific content, which is then performing better than any generic metric. But this is again only telling you the truth if it's applied in the right way. and if the reference is really reliable. So I would say the direction is, this is somehow the direction is good, but we still have to there's still, let's say, room for improvement.
Okay, thank you. Let's see if there are other questions. Okay, thank you. You're very welcome, Friedrich. As I said, you can also raise your hand and we can open your microphones. Who should be in charge of standardizing the metrics for the whole industry?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, it's a good point, but I would say that this what we should. I'm not sure who should be in charge, but what we should avoid is that some companies are, let's say, getting in charge of the metrics. So I think this should be something which should be done by the cross-industry organization. I'm not saying GALA necessarily, but even GALA could be. But let's say, so I would say that, so what is important is it should be monopolized. So that's very important. That's and it should be always transparent. So I think it's really something which should be a cross-industry. Organizations like GALA can do a lot to push things and to move things further and also in for example MQM and all these topics are already very nicely embedded in GALA, I think. By organizing such events and discussions, that's will help, I guess. But it's not one, so it should be not in one hand, but it should be in many hands, and it should be somehow democratized. That's very important, I think.
Yeah, it should be an industry-wide effort, basically.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Let's see if there are other questions. Let's give it a minute, and in the meantime, if you while you guys type your questions, I'll just remind you what's coming on our schedule. On September 27, we have a webinar on international SEO and technical documentation presented by Sarah Presch. September 28th, we have the first of two webinars on post-editing in this new time of neural machine translation, large language models, presented by Viveta Jean. So that is a nice segue to this webinar. And then on October 23rd, we start the last GALA Academy event of 2023, which will focus on terminology management. And yes, we will also talk about AI and its impact on terminology management. So there you are. I don't see any other questions, but if you guys want to continue the conversation, you can see Gabor's email on the screen, so feel free to reach out to him. And Gabor has agreed that he's going to share the slide deck with everyone, so I will upload them on the webinar page as soon as possible, by tomorrow at the latest. So thank you again for presenting at GALA, and thank you to all attendees for participating. And here are some feedback. Excellent presentation. Well, we're glad you liked it, Maria. And before you log out, you'll see on the screen a post-webinar survey. If you could take 10 seconds, literally 10 seconds to fill it in, give us feedback on this presentation, and also what are the topics you would like to see featured during our online online events, our webinars. And if you're interested in presenting at GALA, just let us know also, same form. So thank you again and see you next time. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.